right, well, good morning.
Good morning.
We'll go ahead and get started, and welcome to our autumn Bible study series. We're going to be continuing on from where we left off in our summer series in Genesis. And, well, we'll get into that in a moment. But just a reminder real quickly, this will be 4 sessions, but October 12th, no session. Yes, so just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. I won't be here on the 12th, so you're welcome to come up and sit in here if you would like.
Don't think the 12th is a Tuesday, actually.
Or not the 12th, 14th,
14th.
whatever it is.
12th is
The middle Tuesday,
Yeah.
we're on. All right. Why don't we start our time with a word of prayer? God, we thank you for this day and this time to be together to study your word. And so we invite you into this time to open the word, empower our eyes and our ears and our minds and our hearts to hear what you have for each one of us, and bless our time together. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Right, so we're picking up where we left off. In the summer session, we went through 4 chapters, and we looked at each chapter 1 week at a time, which I think was important to do because that's really, those first 4 chapters are really very foundational, obviously, to a lot of the rest of the stuff that takes place, covering creation and so forth. Going forward, we're going to look at larger sections at a time. Not that we couldn't go in detail in each chapter, but mainly due to the fact that it would take us several years to get through the rest of Genesis if we continued at that pace. So we'll be moving a little bit, covering bigger chunks, as it were. So if you were with us in the summer, some of the foundational stuff that we talked about with Genesis, as far as, we talked about issues around, the fact that different parts of it were written at different times by different people in different contexts. Some of those sorts of foundational things are going to come up again in these studies, but we aren't going to spend quite as much time looking at those. And so my goal, and we'll see how it goes today, is just to have kind of a set of some talking points around different things in the assigned reading to sort of start our conversation. But I want to leave enough room that if you have questions or comments or observations to make, please do so, because obviously there's going to be stuff that I skip over in my notes, but if it's something that stands out to you in your reading, please, we want to make sure that we have time to talk about that and think about it. So we can jump right in. I didn't, on the promotional stuff, I didn't assign chapter 5, which is sort of the link between what we finished up on the last time and what we're getting ready to look at today. But chapter 5 it's a genealogy. So there's not really any story or action that takes place. It's a genealogy which traces basically the generations from Adam until Noah, which is the next story we'll arrive at. It is, if you took a look at it, or if you scan it real quickly now, you'll notice that one of the main features of it is the incredibly long lifespans that are attributed to all of these individuals. Morning. So that's so anyway, it's just an observation to think about. It does come into play, you know, we talked in the last study about sort of the sort of a more hyper-literal reading of these stories, and I think I had the information about the one scholar that had determined that the earth was created at 3 p.m. on such and such a date, 3,000 years ago or whatever. And so this stuff is very important to people who read that way, because that's one of the ways they determine when all these things took place.
It plays into the hands as well of people that haven't got faith, because they might read that and think, well, that's a load of nonsense. How can someone live to 900?
Well,
So
that's right. That's
hard
right.
one, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
It's right at the beginning of the Bible as well.
yes, but yeah, you don't have to go very far to find it. So anyway, so that's chapter 5, and that leads us up to, as the last verse in chapter 5 says, Noah waited till he was 500 to have children. Yeah. Wanted to wait till he was established, probably, had the money. And he has 3 sons, which that will come back around in a few chapters for us. So before we get into chapter 6, what do we know about the story of Noah and the flood? I mean, what's the point? Why does almost every, well, I won't say almost every, why do many church creches have decorations of the story of Noah and the ark? What do we think about that?
It's an easy one to portray, isn't it, for children?
Yeah,
And it appeals to children because it's about animals.
because it's about animals,
Yeah.
sure.
Get a rainbow at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, get
There
the
we
rainbow,
go.
yeah.
But you have to kill off humanity to get there.
Sort of skip over that bit.
Skip over that bit, yeah.
Or why God decided to do this,
Yeah.
which has got some rather weird things there about
Well, that's it.
too many girls and, well.
Well, that's it, and we'll get into that in a minute.
How did they build such a big boat? That's what I want to know.
How did they build such a big, there you go. Yeah.
Three blokes, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, he had
Four blokes.
a few hundred years to get it done, I suppose, so. So there's a couple things contextually to know about, just some cultural context for that time. There appears, according to archaeological records, to have been some sort of catastrophic flood in the ancient Near East sometime around 2900 BCE. So 5,000 years ago, essentially. So there probably was an event that certainly would have left an impression on the memory of the people that lived in that part of the world. Probably, I don't know how to define catastrophic, but I mean, you think if we have a catastrophic flood today, even with all the safeguards that we have in modern building and all that sort of thing, very often there's a significant rate of fatality. So you can imagine people living 5,000 years ago, a massive flood of some sort would be quite devastating. And also remembering that the point of a lot of these stories in Genesis is not exactly to provide an historic account, but is rather to explain, I lost a whole page of my notes, there we go, rather to explain, what was going on. People at the time would have thought of the world primarily as being flat and fairly small. They would have only really recognized part of the world they'd seen, or, been able to explore. And so if you lived in that context and there was a large flood, you would just assume, well, everything must be flooded. So that probably explains some of the language in the story as we go through. There are also similar flood stories in other contemporary Near Eastern cultures. Which along with the archaeological evidence would suggest that something did happen. Both of the other stories are written in the Akkadian language, which is a predecessor to Hebrew. The Assyrians and the Babylonians would have spoken that language, so it's coming from those neighboring cultures. In one story, there's a Noah figure named Athrasis. Let's see. The high god and the god of weather, Enlil, wants to destroy humans. Let me back up. Those two gods, the high god, along with the god of weather, want to destroy humans. Why do you think?
Wickedness.
They're making too much noise. Yeah. So the water god, Ea, helps Athrasis escape by building a large boat to save humanity. The other story is about Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was a historical figure. He was the king of Uruk, and he lived around 2500 BC, so several hundred years after this probably would have happened. In the story about him, he is 2/3 god and 1/3 human, and he's able to interact with the gods in that way. He seeks immortality, and his journey to find immortality leads him to, well, I can't pronounce it, the Noah figure in the story. And that person tells Gilgamesh that he was granted immortality because he was the sole survivor of a great flood. He was saved by the god Ea, who appeared in the other story, who gave him specific dimensions to build a boat that would include as many animals as possible. And in that story, there's some other similarities. As the flood waters recede, the boat comes to rest on a mountain, and he releases birds to see if it's safe to disembark and all of that. So there are some common stories at that time. So let's go back to the point John brought up a minute ago. Why does God want to destroy humanity?
So wicked.
They're wicked.
He's disappointed with them.
Yeah.
What sorts of things are, so this will be at the beginning of chapter 6. Some weird, unusual, just say, stuff.
Misogynistic, isn't it, all the way around?
Well, it talks about the sons of God, which is not really defined as what that, it seems to be some difference than just other humans. So is it sort of like what we might call like angels or something like that? The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them that they chose. And then God sets a lifespan on humans. And then there's the Nephilim, which are also very mysterious people that apparently would seem to be somewhat other than the descendants of Adam, we could say. So there's kind of this cross breeding between these sons of God and humans, which is interesting because hearing the story about Gilgamesh, he's 2/3 God and 1/3 human. I mean, there's kind of that.
Is it because of this sort of semi-demigod or whatever it is? Because, I mean, the Greeks had those as well, didn't they?
Sure, yeah,
Hercules and people like that, well, they're called the heroes or something like that.
yeah.
But this didn't fit in with the idea of just the one true God, did it? So this is trying to sort it out.
Well, I mean, yeah, it depends, I think, what is the wickedness? Is the wickedness because they were marrying these, whatever they were, non-humans, semi-humans, whatever these other,
Well, there are just too many of them. It just seems to think, at the start, I just said, well, there's too many people. We need to whittle it down a bit.
okay,
Mhm.
It also says that he regretted he had made human beings on the earth.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of an
That was my big
interesting-
mistake.
Well, and I think what's interesting to think about is that verse, and you think back to the second creation story with Adam and Eve, and the way God's depicted, walking around the garden, oh, what's going on, and decides it has to kick them out. You think about sort of those human-like qualities that are portrayed, that God is portrayed as having on there, and you compare that to other images of God elsewhere. You think about some of the stories about Moses, and even though Moses can talk to God, God is very much aloof from Moses. Can't see God, can't.
To hide his face.
Yes, exactly. So it's just interesting how, some of those characteristics come into play. So the wickedness could be the intermixing of humans and sons of God, and that violates the order of creation. That could be the wickedness. Could be they were too loud, I don't know, or too many.
Apparently Noah didn't do any of this stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't really explain why Noah was considered righteous, or why Noah was the one person out of all of them that was
And
okay.
his family, otherwise
And his family.
that would have been pointless. But
Yes, yeah,
he doesn't say how many daughters he had either, does it?
no,
Because
No.
the girls don't get much of a mention in any of this.
yeah,
Except that when it's something going wrong.
yeah,
It
that's
says a bit
normal.
further on that the people were violent as well. And that's another reason maybe.
Yes,
In verse 11.
yes.
Why did
Corrupt.
the animals hadn't done anything wrong, why did they have to be eliminated?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, presumably God's method chose a method it had happened.
But they had to be saved because there had to be the flood. If they hadn't been put in an ark, they would have all died, wouldn't they? All
Yeah.
of the animals.
yeah,
Yeah, I know, but he's saying, I will wipe the face of the earth of all the human race, and with them the animals.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
And
you
yeah,
can't have a flood.
why?
You
They
can't
haven't
have,
done
you
anything
can't have a
wrong.
flood that only kills humans. It's got to kill the animals as well.
Yeah, it takes a lot of thunderbolts, doesn't it? A lot of,
yeah.
a lot of lightning strikes.
I don't know. I can't understand any
It's
of it.
not told to bring fish into the ark, which would have been difficult.
That's true, that's true.
Or kangaroos. Or
Yes. But a much smaller world back then, that's,
the little pictures in the Good News Bible, we've got little sketches of this, and it's got little insects and butterflies flying.
well, I mean, Mike mentioned earlier the scale of what's suggested by this as far as the size of the boat, and I mean, how do you round up a pair of everything,
Elephants, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, quite the undertaking to do so. A cubit, and I think it probably mentions it in the, yeah, is the length of the
Yeah.
forearm.
Good news Bible has it all in centimetres, it's amazing.
Yeah.
44 centimetres, I think it says.
Is that,
Oh.
well, it did vary from time to time, but it was roughly, yeah, about 18 inches. So you can extrapolate that and figure out how big, quite a large vessel.
How many decks? It says. Yeah,
4, wasn't it?
3.
Lower,
Three
middle and
or
upper.
four, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, at some point the number of pairs of animals changes
Yeah,
for the unclean and the clean, because
Yeah.
you can move on to that later on, but the
Seven.
clean
No,
ones,
go ahead.
because he has to sacrifice some of the clean ones, so just as well he didn't just take 2, isn't it?
yeah.
Because they wouldn't have survived at all.
So so that brings up kind of an interesting point, because it does change that in chapter 6, verse 19, God says, "You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, every kind of animal, every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive." But then, in chapter 7, verse 2, "Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate. Also 7 pairs of every kind of bird," and on and on. So, yeah,
Is that to do with sacrifice later?
well, so the unclean, the clean animals, yes, it would be because of the need to sacrifice, and it does say, and I didn't
Yeah,
look
they
up the verse, but when
sacrifice
he
at
gets
the
off
end,
the
don't
boat, he
they?
offers a
Yes, he offers
sacrifice.
yes, yeah.
Um,
So you think, oh, just as well there was more than 1 pair of those. You know?
So what's interesting to note here, and we can see it coming in and out of this story and in the genealogies that bracket the story of Noah, are two different voices, two different traditional streams of writing who have kind of combined on this story. So if you remember back, two of those voices we talked about were the priestly voice. The priestly voice was a later writing later, and was mainly concerned with things to do with the temple, things to do with the law, very specific, very rule-oriented. And then there's the Yahwistic voice, which is the storytelling voice. So chapter 6, when Noah's to bring 2 of every animal onto the boat, is from the Yahwistic tradition. That's the storytelling. When you get into the beginning of chapter 7 with all these specifics about the numbers and the clean and unclean and all that, that's very much a priestly voice.
That's not, clean and unclean animals aren't mentioned earlier, are they?
Well, they're not.
Suddenly he
They're
has
not.
to know what Leviticus is going to say a century
Well,
later.
That's right. So the concept of clean and unclean animals doesn't happen until God instructs Moses about that, and it's recorded in Leviticus. So again, you can see it's a later generation of Hebrews who are sort of reading their practice and tradition back into this more ancient story. It also is interesting to think about in terms of, if you'll remember in the story of Cain and Abel, Cain's sacrifice is rejected by God. They were offering sacrifice. It doesn't really explain why. I mean, obviously it was thanksgiving to God, but it doesn't explain how it started.
One was animal and one was something it grew.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. And
the implication, because they were.
But I think the larger implication could also be understood as, well, Cain offered an unclean sacrifice. perhaps. That's me, I don't know that that's the intent of it, but you can kind of see how there's this later influence that's kind of read back into some of these stories as they're told and retold and so forth. Let's see. So Noah is 600 when the floodwaters came. How old? I don't know if it says how old he was when God talked to him. It doesn't say. He was older than 500 because he already had children.
It's all very specific there,
Verse
isn't it?
6.
The month, the day, and the
Yes.
certain day, a certain month, several times.
Well, and again, I think that's that priestly, very precise, very concerned about specific details.
It's
And
verse
we hear
6,
that
it was
come-
600
Yeah,
in verse 6.
yeah, yeah. So he's, 600. Yeah, in the 600, this is verse 11, in the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, is when the,
So the boys are hundreds by that time.
yeah, almost through puberty. Yeah, so then you get the 40 days and 40 nights of rain. We've talked before about this sort of symbolism. 40 tends to be just a long time, and you see that throughout Scripture. So there's a long period of rain, and the floodwaters come up. It says it covers all the mountains. So there's all the destruction. So one way to look at the idea of the flood is that it's a reversal of the creation process. That in the first chapter of Genesis, God separates the dome from the chaos of the water. Everybody remember our Hebrew I taught you? Tohu vavohu. Chaos. Tohu vavohu. So the tohu vavohu returns in the form of the flood. That there's no longer that sort of that separation and that order. And so rather than creating order out of chaos, this is almost a reversal of that as the floodwaters come in. All right, so we get through the flood. They find dry land. Noah and his family come out. They let all the animals out. You gotta imagine that was a smelly place to be.
Yeah, to do a good sewage system.
Yeah. Noah built an altar, offered some of the clean animals as sacrifice, and then God makes a covenant with Noah. So what all is included in the covenant?
It's going to be proper seasons forever.
Okay,
Never going to happen again.
the flood will never happen again.
Never again will I destroy all living creatures.
Yeah. Several times in there is echoed the command that God gave to Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply on the earth. That shows up at the end of chapter 8 and then in the middle of chapter 9.
Mustn't eat meat with blood in it. In fact, it seems, suggests that they didn't eat meat at all before this.
Well, that's it. That's
They were
it.
vegetarians before the flood.
Yeah, they don't have to be vegetarians anymore. That's part of the deal. And then, of course, the rainbow is the visual reminder of God's covenant.
we only get a rainbow when it rains.
Mhm.
But here it implies that the rains have all stopped and the
Um,
rainbow is there. So how come that rainbow is there?
That was the first rainbow. After that, the rainbow came just with the rain as a reminder of it.
Right.
The first rainbow was just
Good.
people of God created.
Okay.
But then he says it's going. Every time you see a rainbow, which presumably means it's going to rain,
Mhm.
or it's to start
It is
raining,
raining, yeah.
it's just raining, but it won't be as bad as it was that time. Is that?
Well, and who is the rainbow intended to be a reminder to?
Noah and his descendants, isn't it?
Well, but God also says, I will see it and remember the covenant.
Oh, so just in case God needed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's,
It's the first time there's a sort of covenant made, isn't it, as well? And it's this idea of covenant.
yeah,
I mean, the
Yeah.
next covenants are with Abraham and
yeah,
all those.
yeah. Yeah, so just, it's kind of an interesting new idea, I guess, at the time that comes out of it.
Well, the ancients must have wondered what they knew what a rainbow looked like. There presumably
Yeah.
have been rainbows before this, but I don't know, well, perhaps they were. But to explain the rainbow, I mean, it took until the 18th century or 17th century to explain it. Newton sort of explained
Well,
it.
Yeah, to sort of explain the scientific
Hmm.
explanation for it. Yeah. Well, again, if we try to put ourselves in a similar place to the people, that would have been writing this story. So, I mean, well, you would have to imagine seeing a rainbow, even though you eventually would associate it with, it just happens when it rains. I mean, that was probably for the time, I mean, that would have been I would imagine, a pretty dramatic,
You might see it as a
event.
waterfall or something like that as well. But
you might, yeah,
But I mean,
yeah.
ancient people, they said there's a god of thunder, there's a god of lightning, and that's
Yeah.
so. This is something that's
Well,
done
you just,
to it,
yeah,
done to us.
you would think it would be sort of almost like a supernatural kind of thing that would occur. And along with thunder and lightning and other things that they couldn't explain. So, I mean, again, that's really, I think we remember this probably at its heart is a way of thinking about something terrible that happened and trying to make sense of why it happened. So, there's those other stories that we had from the neighboring societies, and both of those stories are trying to make sense of, there was this terrible flood and almost everybody died. Why did that happen? And all of those stories, and this story included, the explanation is, well, God or the gods did it. So, what's interesting though to look at in the story we have is, and I think what maybe the point is for us is, why did the authors of this section of Genesis, well, not just the authors, why did the Hebrew people understand that this is how God acted in that moment? Why, I mean, it goes back to the question, why did it happen in the first place? What caused God to be angry enough to do this? Why did God choose this particular person and his family that were exempted from this destruction? Why, knowing that Noah then would be, in a way, sort of the new Adam, that everyone would descend from him. And why did, at the end, God have this interesting covenant with Noah and ultimately with all of Noah's descendants? I mean, those are things that are different from these other stories. And same with the creation story. We talked about competing stories of creation from neighboring cultures in the ancient Middle East, and they were all stories of violence, that the earth was created out of violence. The gods fought against each other, and one way or another the earth was created. And then we have the story in the Bible that the earth is created out of the goodness of God, the love of God. And it's a very different story in that way, right? So, yeah, so what,
To me, I always think the whole point of that story is that God wanted to tell everybody that that's never going to happen again. So,
Okay.
so actually, you can destroy it or whatever, but He's not going to be destroying humankind.
okay,
And what I always think, what a clever, and I can't think of any other symbol that would have been better than a rainbow.
okay,
Because if you're out walking or anyone that sees a rainbow, whether they're religious, not whatever, always remarks on it, don't they?
Yeah,
If they see
yeah,
it,
yeah.
it's always remarked upon. It always is an uplifting thing as well. It's never not, is it? And you just see everyone comment on it.
You
Yeah.
can't,
What else
you
could
can't
you
make
ever
it, can
have?
you? You can't say, oh, I
No,
want a rainbow.
you cannot be
over
that.
there.
No, exactly. It cannot be humanly made, which
Yeah.
most stuff could be, AI and whatever, you
Yeah,
know. I
yeah,
mean, that
yeah.
rainbow, you can make a picture of it, but you can't make it really, can you? So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I mean, hugely, I can't think of anything better.
yeah,
So very clever, and I just think that this whole story and whatever was to the important part is to tell people that that's not going to happen. That He's not going to destroy the world. You're on your own. You've been given free will. You're on your own, and
Yeah.
well, we're not on your own, but I mean, you've been given free will. He's
yeah,
given you that. You know, you've got the responsibility, but that's not God that's going to destroy
yeah,
the world.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. And that was a nice way of telling that.
Almost immediately it goes on to describe how the long-term enemies of God's people
yeah,
fit into all this. Where do they come from? Immediately you get the creation of what they call
Yeah.
the Canaanites.
yeah, yeah. Well, and we had that,
And it turns out it's another family split. This is Cain and Abel
Yes.
again, isn't it?
well, it is, yeah,
Except
well,
there's-
and you think
there's
about,
3 sons this time, but
well, and, and the same thing happened after Cain and Abel, that suddenly there were other people to marry, and he found this other town of people or whatever, and, yeah, it is, before we go on to that though, carrying on what you said, Joe, so do we think, it says in the lead up to the flood, what God regretted making humans, right? So do you think we get that same sense of regret? Is that what leads to the rainbow and the covenant? I mean, I don't think it doesn't really talk about what God thought about it in the way that it does beforehand, but I mean, what do we think? Do you think after the flood, God was like, right, this is what I wanted, let's just go from here? Do you think,
God seems to be all the way through Old Testament. God seems to be still sifting out his people.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
then you get only Abraham out of or Abraham out of the rest, and then later on, there's the slaves all died in Egypt,
yeah,
and then, and so on. You, the ones that got sent to Babylon and didn't survive, there seems to be is that God changing his mind or thinning it out a bit?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
These
did
are
they
the-
see it that way?
Are these not the ideas and the rationalisations of the people who wrote it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, how do we know that God said that? It's what they
Well,
think
that's-
that God
yeah.
said.
That's right.
God's
Yeah.
reason. I think that God thought this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to write down,
Yeah.
God said this, God said that, God thought that. He must have been really cross with us, so blah, 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 blah. You know,
Yeah.
It's just an ordinary human being rationalising
That's right.
what
That's
has
right.
happened
That's
and
right.
If
trying
there
to
was
put it.
this big flood,
Yeah,
then there had to be a reason for
There had to be a
it.
Yeah.
reason
Yeah,
for it, yes.
and so,
Why
God
did God
didn't
do
like
that,
us.
and what happened
Yeah.
afterwards, and why so and so, etc., and how must
Yeah.
it have happened? I mean, we know they couldn't have had 2 elephants and 2 rhinoceroses
No.
and 2 hippopotamus on the up, but
yeah,
you've got to
It's a big
make a
road.
story of it to explain it, and if you
That's
can't
right.
explain it, you do it the best way you can.
yeah. So thinking about that way though, and I mean, you're right, that's the motivation behind the story. So if you think about today, and this may be a more American-centric sort of thing, but, you know, every time there's a Hurricane Katrina, whatever, 20 years ago in New Orleans, devastated New Orleans, and at the time, in the States, a lot of more evangelical-minded people said, well, that's because of the gays. That's God's
Some of it,
punishment because
Yeah.
New Orleans is a hedonistic place and there's gay people there and that's why, you know, and so we come at trying, you know, we can say, well, the hurricane happened because there was this area of low pressure and it built up, or, you know, we can scientifically explain why some things happen. But it doesn't stop people from trying to rationalize it for other reasons. So usually their own, almost always their own. But do we do that? I'm just kind of bouncing off what you said, Brenda. I mean, it's tricky. It's tricky to say, oh, you know, God blessed us with sunny weather because he wanted everyone to come to Bible study today. Well, maybe, but if it rains next week,
Yeah.
does that mean you should all stay home? You know, it's kind of finding that.
It's very easy to put your own ideas and your own culture and your own way of life
Yes.
onto other circumstances, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think to be able to see that and to understand it, it doesn't negate the importance of the story in terms of, like what you were saying, Jill, about, you know, what we can take from it as an understanding of who or what God is and how we relate to that. But I think understanding there's some dissonance between that it's an origin story. Why did that happen? And that we don't have to do all these well, we don't have to figure out how the dinosaurs didn't get on the ark or vice versa, you know, type of thing.
As my evangelical friend said, they were just destroyed in the flood,
Yeah,
and that's all you have to think. That's
yeah,
the answer.
yeah. They were late. They didn't get to the boat on time.
Too big and too late.
So yeah, but I mean, so we still see that today. I mean, you know, that tension is still very much a part of a lot of people's faith in the way that they understand things.
You've also got the good and evil, haven't you,
Yeah.
coming in here
Yes.
as well, is destroying it because of things,
Yeah.
evil
Yes.
happening. And is that also saying a warning to people as well?
Yeah,
You know, that things can happen if you do evil.
It doesn't actually say what the evil is, does
No,
it?
no.
But that means that later on,
Violence.
whoever wrote this over the generations,
Yeah.
they could always
Could
say
define it.
what that
Define
evil
evil.
was at the time. You know, probably whatever's going bad at the moment. You know.
we may be in big trouble right now. I mean, it's, yeah, exactly.
But then again, it says in chapter 8, verse 21, you know, never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. So sort of God, yeah, oh well, they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah,
This flood won't make any difference to people's
Yeah.
behaviour.
yeah,
But he did it all the same.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and you think, you read that and part of you thinks, well, God, you created us, so,
Yep.
you know. So, anyway, well, that takes us way in a different direction, but yeah, it's interesting to see that and think about it. So I do wanna, spend a brief moment on the rest of chapter 9 and then a little bit on chapter 10 before our time's up. So there's this scene kind of tacked on to the end about Noah and his sons. It's kind of a weird
Very
little
odd,
story.
isn't it? Very strange.
Noah gets drunk, falls asleep, apparently naked, and
Surely that's his own fault for a start, you know.
Yeah.
yeah,
He's
and
inside his own tent, so what's the problem?
he's inside his own tent.
Yeah.
Well, and so that's what's interesting. So the one son,
Looking for him.
yeah, I came in looking for him,
Are you
whatever.
okay, Dad? Sort of thing.
So I was naked. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So he left. Said something to his brothers. I don't know if he said, "Oh, go look, he's naked," or if it was, "Don't go in there."
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You know, it doesn't say. And the two brothers walk backwards in and drape a blanket
Why
on
do they
him.
bother? Why don't they just let him sober up?
Yeah. Yeah. And then when he wakes up,
He curses.
he but notice, he doesn't curse Ham. He curses his son. Now, is that because, again, it's some revision from the future where the Canaanites are the enemies, and so this is a good excuse to pin it on them. You know,
Should Ham just have kept it to himself and not go and, you know,
apparently,
encourage the others to be more voyeuristic?
yeah,
And why do they bother? They know you don't.
Yeah.
It's all.
it's just,
It's
it's,
very weird, isn't it?
it is. But again, it's explaining why things are the way they are. This is why we hate the Canaanites, because somebody saw somebody naked, you know.
Because his identity, Ham loses his identity. He just becomes the father of
Yeah,
Canaan
yeah,
at that point.
Yeah. And so then after that, Noah lives another 350 years, and then he died.
The
That's-
Good News Bible's got a little map of all this, showing roughly where they thought all these different places that I mentioned,
Yeah.
where they all are. You got it there.
Yes, so chapter 10 is another genealogy. Take one, pass it around, take one, pass it, and, so this genealogy is,
Good quality paper, doesn't it?
It's a quality man.
So this genealogy, chapter 10, is basically mapping sort of the way that humanity expands after Noah, through his sons. And so, you'll see, I mean, there's the section on the on all three of the sons and their descendants. And this map, I didn't check all of the names against the NIV. There may be some differences in the names that are given, and I apologize for the quality of it, but that was the best one I could find. But just gives you an idea of sort of where these different family groups expanded to around the Middle East. So just a couple of things to note out of that is that next week, the first story we're going to look at is the Tower of Babel. And it's very specific several times in this genealogy about, for example, this is verse 20, these are the sons of Ham by their clans and languages in their territories and nations. So it's really setting up the fact that all these people have different languages, which obviously will come into play in the Tower of Babel story. And it's really the first time it's talked about different languages among different peoples. So probably suggesting, a much wider awareness of their region and the neighboring groups of people, and explaining who they are and who they came from and why they're either good or bad or indifferent, I suppose. Let's see. So Ham's descendants include Nimrod, who founded Nineveh. So we know from the story of Jonah all about Nineveh. Shem's descendants become the Semites, which still comes up in our language today. There was one real interesting one I noticed when I was reading through, and I wasn't able to find much more on it, but in verse 25, it's talking about the sons born to Eber. One was named Peleg because in his time the earth was divided. And that's all it says, and he's the only one in that whole list. And there's not any real explanation for it, but it's just wonder what happened, that the earth was divided.
The earthquake.
Could have been, yeah, could have been. But anyway, just one of those little details that's kind of buried in there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole 3 chapters or so about Noah and the flood, and then just a sentence.
Yeah.
For that one.
The earth was split, that was it. So, anyway, so that was really quick through a lot of stuff. Was that all right? Okay, all right. So next week then, we're gonna look at the next several chapters, 11 through 14. It'll include the Tower of Babel, and primarily focus on Abram and the call of Abram and the early part of that story. So we'll take a look at that next week. Have a real quick song for you today. Lots of music about Noah and the ark. John brought in a score for a musical today about Noah and the ark.
Yeah,
So-
I was in Benjamin Britten's Noah's Flood at school. I was
Yeah.
a Redshank which is all a bit
Wow.
bizarre. But there you go. Every girl in the school wasn't, most of them were animals, yes. And I could still sing you bits now, but I won't. It's stuck in my memory.
Well, this is a very simple and fairly short, song about Noah and the flood.